Midwest Whitetail is brought to you by Hoyt Archery, Fuse Accessories, Realtree, Muddy Outdoors, Cabela's, Rocket Broadheads, Frigid Forage, Trophy Rock, Easton Arrows, RTP Outdoors, Non-Typical Wildlife Solutions, Ozonics, Wilderness Athlete, Grizzly Coolers, Redneck Hunting Blinds, and Nikon.
Welcome to this week's episode of Midwest Whitetail. First, I'm going to give you an update of the rich man versus poor man plots that I started in last week's episode. I had a little bit of a setback in the process of building a crossing to get back to the rich man plot. My plan for today was an ambitious one. I was going to make a crossing on this little creek behind me that would take us on the side where the rich man plot is. Unfortunately, it's all sand, and these crossings, when the water comes up in these little creeks, it just swirls around and just fills these crossings up with sediment. So you end up with a bunch of sand in here. Well, I didn't get it cleaned good enough as I was coming down. I didn't get it down to the bare dirt. So I was working in sand, and I pulled it down in here and picked up a load, was trying to back it out, and got stuck. So here it sits. I'll have to grab the tractor and hopefully I can pull it out with the tractor. Otherwise, I'm not exactly sure what I'll do for a plan C. But these crossings are a lot of trouble. They call them Missouri crossings, and you can clean them out, and the next rain they fill right back in again, and you're stuck cleaning them back out again. And like I've shown here, there's a lot of water down in there, and if you start digging into it, you run into sand and water, and that's not a good combination when you're trying to get some traction. So hopefully we can get this thing pulled out of here and either just bail on the whole rich man plot idea of trying to get the equipment across there, or work on the crossing a little bit more and hopefully do it in a way where I don't get stuck. In the battle of the rich man versus the poor man, it looks like the poor man is winning at this point. That is one of the advantages of the poor man plot, because you don't need equipment. You can get to some out of the way places that would be really tough to get to with any kind of equipment. I'm gonna work some more on that crossing, or else I'm gonna move down the creek and try to find another spot that I can open up to get my equipment across to the rich man side. It's possible that it may be summer before we get a rich man plot going. I'll keep at it, but for sure we're gonna bring you the poor man plot. The poor man wins round one of the battle. In the meantime, while I'm waiting for the roundup to do its job on those two plots, I'm down here in a food plot that we started last spring. And you might remember this spot. It seems like it's been on my do list for, well, at least 12 months now, and got all the trees cut out of it, and then did a little bit more cleanup work with the tractor, pushed everything off. Chad Lathrop came in here about maybe 6 weeks ago or so with a skid loader and a root, I don't know what they call those things, but whatever it is, it's a little device that goes on the skid loader that you can pry roots out with. And he cleaned up most of this. There's gonna be a lot of roots in here, but I'm gonna start tilling it today and see what I end up with. I'm sure that I'll rip up a bunch of roots that we have to clean up and throw off. But the real project today is to get at least some of this tilled up and planted into Plow Down Clover. And this is something that Frigid Forage sells. It's a real fast growing, high tonnage, high volume clover blend that you plant in the spring. I mean, you could frost eat it in the winter. That would probably be ideal if you went into something like Big and Beastie or Bean Ground or something like that that's clean. But you plant it in the spring, and then you come back about midsummer, about the time that you would normally start to create your Big and Beastie plots. We're gonna mow it, and then we're gonna till it in. And you get a lot of They call it green manure is one definition of it, but you get a lot of nitrogen added to the soil with all of that extra vegetation that you incorporate into the ground. So you can get away without putting as much fertilizer on, which saves money. And in the process of that, you've got another crop on that food plot that otherwise would just be fallowed if you were going to go big and beastie on big and beastie, you know, for a couple of years in a row. The Plow Down Clover gives you something to stabilize the soil, but also these are varieties that the deer will eat. So if it does really well and the summertime, you know, comes along and I'm down here looking at it thinking, you know, maybe I'm better off just maintaining this for a year and then coming back and doing the big and beastie next year. It gives you that option. At least you've got a food plot. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to till this thing up. Ideally, we'll till the whole thing. We'll see how the weather holds and whether I can keep my tiller together with all these roots in here. But by the end of this episode, I'm hoping to have about an acre food plot here tilled up and broadcast into the Plow Down Clover. Got the tilling done on the plot. So the next step now is to get the Plow Down Clover out and get it into the over shoulder, the broadcast bag, I guess you call it. Things work really handy. So I have to get it kind of calibrated as I go. I don't know exactly what setting to put it on. The seed's gonna be small, so I'm sure the opening will be small too. But if you look at this, it's a little bit rough still, but the first year when you convert a plot like this or an opening like this into a food plot, it's gonna be pretty rough. Every year after this that we go in and till it, it's gonna get smoother and smoother until finally it'll be just perfect like a carpet going across there. So this'll, it'll be a really cool spot. It should be a kind of a honey hole for all the deer to pile into. So this is the Plow Down Clover. Mostly red clovers, mammoth red, medium red, crimson, and berseem clovers. A nice mix of those varieties. This is not the ideal clover for just planting as a food plot. The Frigid Forage Pure Trophy Clover is actually the better choice if you want to go in and just make a spot that you know is going to stay in clover. That's a white clover blend mostly, there's some red in it, but the deer get more nutrients out of the white clover. It's higher in protein and it's higher in digestibility because these taller clovers, they're gonna get real stemmy. And that's really good for producing extra tonnage that you can, you know, incorporate into the ground to get the nitrogen, but it's not necessarily the perfect blend if you're just trying to feed deer. But one way or the other, we're gonna look at this in a couple of months. I'm gonna get it spread right now, and then we'll take another look at it later on in the summer and show you what it looks like at that time. I'm back down at the poor man plot today, and you can see that the grasses and the weeds behind me are dead. They haven't dried all the way down yet. I think it's about 9 days since we were in here and sprayed this. Looks like with the chemical that I used on this burn off, on this spraying, it's probably going to be about 2 weeks before it's completely dried down. So I kind of keep that in mind. I mean, this is going to burn. We did a little test fire right behind me here and it's going. So this will burn off, but I think it would burn a lot quicker and a lot easier if it was just a little bit more brown dead rather than kind of yellow dead. Either way, it's going to be a really cool spot. You can see behind me that it's maybe, oh, I don't know, 30, 40 yards across. It's not a big spot, but this is in a central location where a lot of deer funnel through and go past the end of this little creek to my left. So you got outside bend of a creek. So you got a high bank so the deer aren't crossing here. They're going around that outside of that bend. You got a nice little small spot here where we can sort of concentrate and hold those deer for a bow shot. Eventually I may end up with a redneck blind down here, and I understand that kind of defeats the purpose of a poor man plot when you put a fancy redneck blind on it, but it'll make this spot hunt a lot easier. I'm gonna get on with mowing, or with burning, and then we'll talk a bit more after that about the next step. Let me recap what we've done so far. We did site selection, we've sprayed it. There's some brush cutting that I need to do here. I've got the Hoyman extension saw, the little electric extension saw back here on the four-wheeler. I'll clean out the remainder of those saplings and brush. We'll leave a couple of the bigger trees in there just for fun, and they're not gonna hurt anything. and then that'll be it for the brush clearing. Then like I said, the burn will take care of all the residue and debris along the ground, and then I'll be able to spread my seed today. So after all these steps, I'll have a really nice food plot when I come back here in October to hunt it. I tried to burn it, I just didn't have any success here today. The weeds aren't probably quite dried down enough, and then we had a good rain a couple of days ago, so the ground is wet. So the stuff that's laying on the ground is too wet to burn. And there's too much debris and grass and just organic matter on top of the ground that if I spread the seed now, I'm not sure I'd get very good seed to soil contact with my seed. And you have to have that in order to get good germination. The seed has to be in contact with the soil. And ideally, it's even just very thinly buried into the soil so that the moisture can soak into the seed and be preserved there long enough for it to germinate, put a root down, and then grow. We're not going to have that today, unfortunately. So the guys are going to come back in a couple of days and finish this project for me. I've got some obligations over the weekend, so they're going to hit this on Sunday, and then I'll wrap up after that. But before we get out of here today, I'm going to go ahead and take the Heumann extension saw and clean up a bunch of this brush that's in here. That'll just make it a little bit easier for those guys to finish the job on Sunday.
I don't think we're going to get anywhere. It's stuff's still pretty green. It's Sunday and Zach and I are back in the poor man plot, and we're still running into the same problem. A lot of this grass is still a little green. The Roundup's still taking its toll, and there's still standing water in here. Been getting quite a bit of rain here in the past couple weeks. So instead of just burning it in patches, we're just gonna walk away, let all this stuff die off. The problem with burning it in patches, we're gonna have green regrowth starting to pop up. Hopefully this stuff will die off within the next 4 to 5 days, come back, be able to burn it off completely, get a really nice seed bed, spread our pure trophy clover, and have our poor man plot finished. But as of now, the story of the poor man plot and the struggle of the food plots this year is gonna continue. So we'll be back in here in the next couple days, and hopefully that'll be the last time we'll be in here before we get some seed in the ground.
In the battle of the rich man versus the poor man, we don't have a winner yet. This battle is still a draw. In fact, I could say they're both losers. I was thinking that the poor man was going to come out ahead here because we could get to that plot, but the weather has just been holding us back a little bit with the real wet ground, not being able to burn that off. So we're going to work on it during the coming week, and hopefully I can get that crossing, either the one that we were in where we got stuck, get that one cleared out, or find a different way to get across that creek in order to work on that rich man plot this week too. I'm standing in the spot where I drilled this about 2 weeks ago with the Genesis seeder and put soybeans in here. Just wanted to give you a quick update on how it's doing, how well they're coming out of the ground, and then give you kind of a quick tip on planting soybeans for food plots. It's a little bit different than planting them for agricultural purposes. So overall, I've been real impressed. The beans are coming up good. We've had a decent amount of moisture, and now we're starting to get some heat. So when you put those combinations together, you get a lot of rapid growth, and the beans are definitely popping out of the ground now. So I'd say I'm in good shape on this field. But the next thing in the challenge of raising a food plot, especially soybeans, is getting it past the deer when the beans are at their most vulnerable stage. And we'll use the non-typical hot zone fence for some small plots. Keep the deer completely out, let the beans or the corn get past those vulnerable stages. And with the beans, it's about 6 inches to 8 inches tall. I don't know how many leaves that is, but you got to get it up there growing with several leaves above the ground. If the deer come through and nip them off right when the first little bean is popping out, the growing point is above the ground, and that kills the bean, so it doesn't continue to grow. Like right now at this point, at this age of the bean, if the deer are finding these and nipping them off, there won't be any beans in this food plot, at least in the spots where they nip. So you can either protect them with the hot zone fence, or one of the tricks that I use now is I don't clean up the food plot with spray until the beans are up there and more or less past that vulnerable stage. It's real easy for a deer to walk into a food plot if it's all lined out and clean and there's no grass growing up in there, no vegetation, and just walk right down the row and nip them all off. Turkeys will do that too. But if you have some competition in here for a little while, some weeds and some grasses, and let the beans sort of work their way up with this cover, then when you come back and spray it and clean the cover out, then the beans are already past that stage, and it's not, the deer haven't really come in on them and concentrated on the beans quite as hard. So keep that one in mind. It's a little trick that I use on any food plot that I'm not going to fence. I don't spray it until the beans are up a little bit and past that vulnerable point. Well, that's it for this week. Like I said, we're going to be back into the battle of the food plots, poor man versus rich man, and we'll see if we can get at least one of them built before the next episode to show you. I appreciate you joining me. We'll see you right back here again next week for the next episode of Midwest Whitetail. And remember to always dream big.